There's a kind of freedom that only silence can give. It's the quiet freedom of no longer explaining why you are choosing peace. It's the freedom that comes when you stop entertaining people who keep misunderstanding your silence as weakness. You begin to realize that maturity doesn't need to prove itself. It simply lives differently. When you choose silence, you are no longer playing by the same rules the world expects. You are saying, I'm done trying to convince people of my worth. My fruit will speak where my voice will not. You see, the people who walk away from you when you go quiet were never connected to your heart. They were connected to your noise. Some only valued your energy because it fed their emptiness. But when you stop feeding them, their hunger reveals their intentions. Silence becomes a mirror. It reflects the truth about who's really for you. You'll start seeing who stays when you stop explaining, who listens when you stop talking, who values your presence when you're no longer performing. God often speaks in silence because silence reveals what sound conceals. When you quiet the noise around you, you start hearing his direction clearly. Sometimes the confusion you feel is not because you lack clarity. It's because you have too many voices competing for your attention. Every opinion, every suggestion, every argument becomes a layer of noise over the whisper of the Spirit. And when you finally choose silence, you peel back those layers until his voice is all that's left. There's something sacred about silence. It's where you find the courage to heal without applause. It's where you find peace without permission. When you stop running to people for validation, you start walking with God for revelation. Silence allows your soul to breathe again. It's where brokenness becomes whole, where strength is reborn, and where your vision becomes clear again. Some of you are exhausted, not because you're doing too much, but because you're surrounded by too many. The wrong people can drain you more than hard work ever will. Every conversation, every complaint, every argument pulls from your emotional account. You cannot pour vision into a vessel that keeps leaking peace. That's why silence becomes your protection. When you stop responding, you stop bleeding energy. When you stop engaging, you stop losing focus. The moment you stop explaining your absence is the moment you start honoring your assignment. People who truly understand your heart won't require an explanation for your peace. They will know that when you retreat into silence, it's not rejection, it's reflection. Silence gives you time to think, to pray, to align your actions with your calling. You can't hear divine strategy when you're surrounded by constant chatter. God does his deepest work in the stillness, not in the spotlight. And let me tell you something, silence will test your ego. Because the ego wants to respond, to defend, to justify. But the Spirit wants to rise above. The flesh craves reaction, the Spirit craves reflection. Silence is the discipline of the strong. It's restraint wrapped in wisdom. It's choosing not to lower yourself just to prove a point. When you stay silent, you give the Holy Spirit permission to speak for you in ways your words never could. There's a difference between peacekeepers and peacemakers. A peacekeeper avoids confrontation to keep people comfortable, but a peacemaker confronts chaos by choosing calm. Cutting someone off in silence doesn't mean you're avoiding them. It means you're preserving the sacred space God gave you. Some doors must remain closed for the oil to keep flowing. You can't anoint your future while entertaining distractions from your past. Silence teaches you discernment. You begin to see that not everyone's opinion deserves an answer, not every invitation deserves acceptance, and not every question deserves a response. Silence helps you filter what's relevant from what's noise. You realize that responding to everything is the fastest way to lose yourself. You learn that peace doesn't come from control. It comes from release. When you stop trying to manage how others see you, you start living freely. Sometimes silence is not about them, it's about you. It's about healing the part of you that used to crave attention, validation, and approval. It's about learning to be content in the quiet, to know that you are enough even when no one is clapping. When you master silence, you stop being manipulated by noise. You stop reacting to negativity because you're anchored in peace. You stop chasing closure because you've already found calm. God will always honor your silence more than your shouting. When Jesus stood before Pilate, he didn't defend himself because truth doesn't need validation. The silence of Christ was louder than any accusation. It was dignity in motion. It was power under control. That's what it means to cut them off without anger, to rise above with grace. You're not proving your worth, you're preserving it. You're not walking away in pride, you're walking forward in purpose. You'll notice something powerful when you start moving in silence. Peace will follow you. The atmosphere around you will change. Your thoughts will settle. The weight of other people's expectations will begin to lift, and you'll find a new strength in solitude. Silence sharpens your spirit. It refines your focus. It teaches you that you don't need to shout your value to be heard by the right people. Those who are meant to walk with you will understand your silence as clearly as your words. They'll know that your quiet doesn't mean absence. It means alignment. They'll recognize that your retreat isn't rejection, it's restoration. And those who misinterpret your silence reveal they were never listening to your heart, only to their own noise. When you stop defending yourself, you give space for God to defend you. When you stop chasing explanations, you invite his elevation. Every time you choose silence over anger, you plant seeds of peace that will grow into wisdom. Every time you refuse to argue, you build spiritual authority. And every time you let go quietly, heaven takes note. Silence doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing the right thing quietly. It's praying instead of posting. It's fasting instead of fighting. It's letting God vindicate instead of you retaliating. It's knowing that stillness is not surrender. It's strategy. Because when you stop fighting for attention, you start moving in intention. You'll reach a stage where silence becomes your sanctuary, where you no longer need to be understood to be at peace, where the noise of opinions fades behind the clarity of your purpose. In that quiet place, you'll find power. Not the power to control others, but the power to control yourself. That's when you'll realize that silence was never emptiness. It was strength in disguise. When you begin to walk in silence, you step into a level of strength few people understand. The world teaches you to shout, to argue, to make your point heard. But the kingdom of God teaches you to stand still and let your peace speak. Silence is not the absence of power, it's the evidence of control. It's when your emotions are disciplined, your tongue is tamed, and your heart is anchored in the calm confidence that God fights for you. The more you mature spiritually, the less you argue. Because when truth lives inside you, it doesn't need defense. It simply endures. There will be people who cannot handle your silence because they thrived on your reactions. They will poke, provoke, and pressure you just to see if they still have access to your emotions. But when you respond with silence, you break the cycle. You show them that peace cannot be manipulated, and your spirit is not a playground for confusion. The moment they realize they can no longer disturb your calm, they lose the power they once had over you. Silence disarms control. It frees you from emotional bondage. It turns noise into background music and gives you space to listen to God again. Every time you choose silence, you are training your spirit to rise above. It's easy to shout back. It's powerful to stay still. It's easy to send the message. It's powerful to delete it. It's easy to argue for closure. It's powerful to walk away without one. Because the truth is, closure doesn't come from people. It comes from peace. The moment you accept that someone's understanding is not required for your healing, you are free. Silence teaches you to surrender control of outcomes. It teaches you to trust that whatever leaves your life by peace was never meant to stay. There's a spiritual authority that rests upon a person who has learned to hold their peace. That's why Scripture says, "Be still and know that I am God." The knowing comes in the stillness, not in the struggle. When you cut people off quietly, you're not trying to hurt them. You're making room for the divine. You are saying, "God, take the space they used to occupy in my mind and fill it with your wisdom." And God honors that. Because he can only deposit revelation where distraction has been removed. You will find that silence is not just about cutting others off. It's also about cutting off the noise within, the arguments in your own mind, the memories that replay pain, the questions that keep you stuck. Silence creates the space for your soul to reset. You start hearing yourself again, your own desires, your dreams, your vision. The voice of God becomes clear again. Sometimes you don't need another conversation. You need quiet. Because clarity is born in stillness, not in chaos. The enemy will always try to make you believe that silence means defeat. He'll whisper. They'll think you're weak if you don't respond. But strength is not proven by volume. Real power moves in quiet confidence. Even Jesus remained silent before his accusers. He understood that purpose doesn't need to shout. When you are aligned with destiny, your silence terrifies the enemy. Because the devil cannot interpret calm. He feeds on reaction, not reflection. Every time you respond with peace, you rob him of power. There's a lesson in learning not to explain every move you make. When God shifts your life, not everyone will understand. Some will question, some will gossip, some will misunderstand your silence as arrogance. Let them. Their perception is not your problem. The more you try to explain spiritual transitions to unspiritual minds, the more you delay your own progress. Some things must remain sacred, protected by silence. Because not everyone can handle the details of what God is doing in you. The womb of transformation is always quiet. You'll notice that after you cut off the noise, your mind becomes sharper. Ideas start flowing. Peace becomes your atmosphere. You begin to see that your energy was never the problem. Your environment was. The silence reveals where your spirit feels safe and where it feels suffocated. It shows you who brings peace and who drains it. That's the beauty of cutting people off without anger. You're not punishing them. You're protecting what God has placed within you. You're guarding your oil, your focus, your destiny. When you live in silence long enough, you begin to attract differently. You stop attracting chaos because you no longer operate in confusion. You start drawing people who match your peace, not your pain. You begin to see that silence is not loneliness, it's alignment. The people who truly belong in your next chapter will recognize your stillness as strength, not distance. They'll understand that your silence is not a wall, it's wisdom. Every great destiny demands a season of separation. Abraham had to leave his family. Joseph had to be isolated before he was elevated. Jesus often withdrew from the crowds to pray. Every moment of divine preparation is marked by quiet. So when God starts removing people from your path, don't panic, prepare. Don't mourn the loss, make room. Because when he prunes, he's getting ready to multiply. And the sign of divine pruning is often silence. Don't confuse God's silence with his absence. Sometimes his quietness is his greatest communication. He is teaching you to stand without validation, to move without applause, to trust without evidence. He's training your spirit to find stability in stillness. When everything else is loud, his voice whispers through peace. And that peace will lead you to make decisions that words could never explain. Silence doesn't always mean that nothing is happening. It means something deeper is forming. It's in the quiet moments that roots grow. Trees don't make noise when they grow. They simply rise. Likewise, your strength will develop quietly. You won't need to announce your progress. Your peace will reveal it. The best revenge is not success, it's serenity. Because nothing confuses the enemy like a person who refuses to lose their calm. So keep walking in silence. Let your growth be private. Let your transformation be unseen. Let God handle the explanations. You don't need to post your process or defend your decisions. The ones who are meant to understand will see the fruit. The rest were never meant to follow you beyond the noise. When you master silence, you master yourself. And when you master yourself, you become unstoppable. Because at the end of the day, silence is not emptiness. It's full of meaning. It's the quiet roar of discipline, the whisper of wisdom, and the echo of inner strength. When you learn to cut people off without anger, you declare that peace is your priority and destiny is your direction. And there is no louder statement than that. Silence is a way of protecting you from what words could destroy. Every time you choose quiet over conflict, you build spiritual muscles that words could never strengthen. You start realizing that peace isn't found in winning arguments. It's found in walking away from them. It's found in being so anchored in your identity that you no longer need anyone's validation to confirm what God already told you. When you live like that, your silence becomes your greatest shield. It deflects negativity, guards your heart, and gives you the space to hear divine instructions clearly. The moment you stop engaging in noise, you start ascending in purpose. Because noise keeps you grounded in drama, while silence lifts you into discernment. You begin to sense when something no longer serves your spirit. You stop justifying connections that consistently cost you peace. You stop chasing what drains you and start cherishing what grows you. And that's when the real transformation begins, when you're no longer fueled by emotion, but guided by peace. Some people will never understand why you suddenly went quiet. They'll think you're bitter. They'll say you've changed. They'll assume you're prideful. But the truth is, silence is not about pride. It's about protection. It's about choosing wholeness over chaos. It's about recognizing that you've outgrown conversations that go nowhere. It's about understanding that every response has a cost, and some words are too expensive to spend on people who don't value peace. Silence doesn't mean you stopped caring. It means you started caring differently. You're learning to love people from a distance, to forgive them quietly, to bless them without inviting them back into your space. You can wish someone well without wishing them near. Because peace doesn't require proximity, it requires perspective. And when you finally gain that perspective, you start realizing that silence is not absence, it's advancement. Every season of elevation comes with separation. You can't go higher carrying the weight of unnecessary voices. There are people who once spoke into your life who no longer have the authority to. Their chapter in your story has closed, and keeping them in your next one would be disobedience disguised as loyalty. Some people were only meant to teach you lessons, not walk with you forever. And when God shows you that, silence becomes your obedience. You stop announcing your departure. You simply walk away in peace. There's wisdom in knowing that not every battle is yours to fight. The moment you let go of the need to respond, you make room for God to intervene. Silence is faith in motion. It says, God, I trust you to handle what my words can't. It's the kind of strength that refuses to be reactive because it knows that divine justice operates best in quiet confidence. You don't have to prove your innocence when God is your defender. You don't have to expose lies when truth has a way of revealing itself. All you need to do is stay still long enough for God to work. When you learn to be still, you start seeing how much energy you used to waste. Energy spent defending yourself, explaining yourself, trying to convince people who were never willing to understand. Silence conserves that energy. It redirects it toward purpose. You begin to pour your focus into building, creating, growing, and praying instead of reacting. Silence becomes the incubator where your next level matures. The less you talk about it, the more powerful it becomes. There's a mystery in how silence elevates you. People who once overlooked you will begin to notice something different. It's not that you're louder, it's that you're lighter. You carry peace, and peace is magnetic. Peace commands respect in a way noise never can. When you stop talking about what you're doing and simply start doing it, you disrupt expectations. You move in a way that makes people wonder what changed, and what changed is your focus. You no longer chase approval, you chase purpose. The most dangerous person is the one who has mastered their silence. Because silence means they've learned to listen. To God, to wisdom, to intuition. They've learned to observe before they respond. They've learned that not every insult deserves attention. Not every betrayal deserves confrontation. And not every apology deserves acceptance. Silence gives you time to process instead of react. It helps you discern between what needs healing and what needs releasing. It gives you the power to pause before you decide. And in that pause, you find peace. There's beauty in detaching from the noise of expectations. For so long, you've been trying to please everyone, to explain every decision, to justify every boundary. But silence teaches you that you owe no one an explanation for choosing peace. You don't need to announce who you've cut off. Your absence will speak for itself. The people who are meant for you will understand your quiet without questioning it. They'll recognize that your silence is not punishment. It's preservation. In silence, you begin to rebuild your inner world. You find yourself again. You start remembering who you were before the noise. You reconnect with your purpose, your passion, your peace. You start realizing how much of your voice was wasted trying to convince people who were never listening. And when you stop speaking to the wrong audience, God introduces you to the right one. You discover that silence was never meant to isolate you. It was meant to prepare you for new connections that align with your destiny. When you learn to live like that, silence becomes sacred. It becomes your prayer room, your strategy table, your sanctuary. You find yourself talking less to people and more to God. You begin to value still mornings, quiet evenings, moments when you can just breathe without needing to be understood. You stop seeking comfort in conversation and start finding it in communion. Silence becomes the bridge between your struggle and your breakthrough. And yes, sometimes silence hurts, because cutting people off quietly means grieving silently too. It means feeling the loss without an audience. It means letting go of familiar voices even when it feels lonely. But remember, loneliness is not always a sign of emptiness. Sometimes it's a sign of refinement. God separates before he elevates. He pulls you into silence not to punish you, but to prepare you. Because in that quiet space, he's shaping you for something greater. Every moment you stay silent in the face of provocation, you are choosing peace over pride. Every time you walk away instead of arguing, you are teaching your soul to trust God's timing. Every time you hold your tongue, you are reminding yourself that peace is priceless. And when peace becomes your priority, no amount of noise can steal it from you. So when people question your silence, let them wonder. You don't owe them answers, you owe yourself peace. Keep moving forward quietly. Keep building silently. Keep healing without announcement. Let your actions make the noise your words no longer need to make. Because silence, when led by wisdom, is not withdrawal. It's transformation in progress. There will come a point where silence becomes your superpower. It's not something you learn overnight. It's something life teaches you through pain, disappointment, and revelation. You stop arguing because you finally understand that peace is more expensive than pride. You stop explaining because you realize understanding is a choice, not a guarantee. You stop chasing because you finally trust that what belongs to you won't require you to beg. That's the beauty of silence. It refines your spirit until you no longer crave what once controlled you. People may start to call you distant, cold, or mysterious, but they won't realize that silence didn't make you hard. It made you wise. You learn that energy is sacred, that not everyone deserves access to your mind, and that not every emotion deserves expression. Silence helps you heal in private, rebuild in secret, and grow without distraction. You begin to see how much strength it takes to stay quiet in moments when everything in you wants to defend your name. But that restraint, that holy calm, becomes your greatest authority. When you stop talking, you start seeing. The fog clears, and suddenly you can discern who is for you and who is merely familiar. You begin to sense who drains you and who feeds you. You start valuing the few who understand your quiet over the many who misunderstood your words. Silence simplifies your circle. It filters your environment. It makes you immune to manipulation because your peace can no longer be baited by provocation. And something divine begins to happen. You stop being reactive and start being reflective. Instead of asking, why did they treat me that way? You start asking, what is God teaching me through this? Instead of saying, they don't deserve my silence. You start thinking, my silence is not for them. It's for me. You realize that when you hold your peace, you give God permission to speak louder than you ever could. When you finally master this kind of silence, you stop rushing to prove your worth. You let time and fruit do the talking. You allow results to echo what explanations once did. You learn that some victories are silent, some blessings come quietly, and some breakthroughs happen when you stop trying to be understood. Silence matures you. It makes you unshakable. It transforms you into someone whose presence speaks more than their words ever could. And in that space, the sacred stillness of letting go without bitterness, walking away without revenge, and growing without noise, you discover the rare peace that can't be taken from you. Because the truth is, when you learn to move in silence, you no longer chase recognition, you carry revelation. When you finally embrace silence, you discover it was never a weapon of withdrawal, it was a declaration of strength. You realize that peace was not the absence of conflict, but the mastery of your response. The moment you stop explaining yourself to the wrong people, you make room for God to exalt you before the right ones. Silence becomes your testimony, proof that you have outgrown the noise that once defined you. It is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is not surrender, it is strategy. Because when you cut them off without anger, when you choose peace over pride, and when you walk away without bitterness, heaven takes notice. Every quiet step becomes a statement that says, I trust God more than I trust my emotions. You are no longer led by reaction, but by revelation. You are no longer driven by noise, but by purpose. So let your silence roar louder than words ever could. Let it tell the world that you found strength in stillness, power in peace, and victory in restraint. For those who once misunderstood your quiet will one day witness your rise. And they will know that it was not your noise that made you great, but your silence that made you unshakable.